I got this request from one of our people here on the channel asking, hey, could we maybe talk about some features we like from Sony? Because if you've been following my videos, you've no doubt seen that I'm not impressed with what Sony has done as of late. I mean, let's just take a kind of trip down memory lane. I mean, they have their brand new Xperia 1 phone, their 1 Pro, right? Where that's basically a 1-inch sensor that they only use 60% of. 12 megapixels to be specific. That's a scam. You know, they have the A90J talking about being a Master Series television, yet the Hisense U8G was more accurate out of the box. That's a scam. And if we go down the list of Sony products, we can find things that they do that aren't the best. So naturally speaking, when I report on this, people get up in arms. But today I have a gift for everybody who likes Sony, because contrary to popular belief, this video is being shot on a Sony A7R Mark II. That's how long I've been with Sony, at least as far as their full-frame line goes. Not even considering all the other Alpha series cameras, as I'm exclusively an Alpha shooter that I've been using. The relevancy to this is to kind of establish that there is no bias or hatred for Sony, but we are calling out when they mess up. Now, we're going to talk about what they do right and what they do wrong, and if you can't handle it, that's tough. But, as I was saying earlier in the video, here's a gift for you, because I'll be giving you 5 things and 5 features more specifically about Sony that I really like. And we're going to get into the point right now. Super bit mapping. This is Sony's #1 feature. Nobody ever talks about it but me. I'm basically, as what Anonymous calls, the person bringing in the new school of color science. I really love this feature because it allows you to have basically super processing up to over 12 bits on your television, and it smooths out your gradations. Now this is relevant when you get into the next feature that I like, which is their color space. Their color space is incredible. You have so many options: Adobe RGB, DCI, and my favorite, BT 2020. The widest color space that any consumer set can possibly access. Now this is huge information because when combined with super bit mapping, oh boy, does magic happen. And it happens so wonderfully that once you see it, you really don't go back to watching the regular Rec 709, or even in some weird cases, the lower standards that some people have for these televisions, and the 601. So yeah, I am really a big stickler for making sure that I'm using super bit mapping all the time. Now, what is this super bit mapping? Well, they tie it into a feature called smooth gradation. So if you've seen a Sony television with smooth gradation, that's their super bit mapping processing, which essentially smooths those gradients and gives you, again, that beautiful image. And that is like one of the best of the best. Now, for me, another thing that I would have to say puts Sony above the pack as far as features that I like that Sony does is definitely their X motion clarity. When they first announced it back on the Sony X900F, they were talking about allowing you to use black frame insertion without losing any of the brightness. Now, if you've kept score in the technology world, black frame insertion technology basically allows you to be able to super speed up your frame rates of your television and get this really crazy fluid look. And usually it's associated with a flicker and a substantial amount of, brightness when you don't have flicker. And Sony introducing this in a way that you didn't have any of that, massive. Of course, the 900F came out and that was a complete and total gimmick, and I trashed them for it rightfully. But as time went on, they got better and better at making it. You know that whole thing about waiting for the beta tester period to be over and then coming out with it on newer models? Gen 2s, Gen 3s, that kind of thing. Yeah, it definitely worked out as time went on. Now, on some of their OLEDs, it doesn't really work so well, and I don't ever really use it on things like the A90J or even the A80J, but on their LED TVs, it does a pretty darn good job. And that, for me, is pretty much everything I could look for when you're talking about Sony TVs. Now, let's talk about another feature that I am just super excited about, and that is going to be their Reality Creation Suite. Every purist turns it off. Every influencer turns it off. They have no idea what it is. It's essentially their sharpness processing chipset that allows you. It's like a processing tool in their chipset, I should say, that allows you to be able to refine noise and sharpness at the same time with that one adjustment slider. And It's awesome. You can choose to do automatic, which does all that stuff for you, or you can just go ahead and add it yourself. Now, this is different from the baked-in generic sharpness that just kind of enhances all your edges. This finds parts of your image that needs to be sharp and sharpens it. And it's kind of destructive and not destructive at the same time, depending on your experience level with it, but it adds so much more depth and clarity, moreover, into basically everything that, like, more often than not, you can ramp up that sharpness and turn down your internal sharpness and experience a load better picture quality. So there's a nice little pro tip there for you beginners out there. But either way, it's definitely one of my favorite Sony features. Now, last on the list, we have the most important bee's knees Sony feature ever created. Triluminos. Now, some people have forgotten that in 2013, Sony was the first ever company to introduce quantum dots to the consumers, to the masses. And it was awesome. We saw it with their 900 series. The W900A, in my opinion, still one of the greatest, most beautiful TVs around. But if you don't have one of those TVs, you're kind of stuck with the quantum dots we have today, which have been renamed by Samsung to directly compete, attack, and basically manipulate a lot of people into thinking it was an OLED by saying QLED. It was really clever marketing on Samsung's part, but as you guys see, as time goes on, they're kind of going the route of OLED anyway. It was just them buying time for themselves. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Triluminos is incredible because the color that you get out of traditional quantum dot televisions, they're nice, but Sony takes it a step further with their refinement of natural skin tonality, natural foliage tonality, and Triluminos was a way of bridging the gap between, end user and consumer / prosumer kind of displays. And it was wonderful because what ended up happening was we had the Triluminos, which was essentially a red, green, blue LED. It basically had red, green, blue, green behind the LED structure, which it totally changed the game because that extra green gave you that luminosity, gave you that pop, gave you that color, and it was way more than what we saw from any of the TV manufacturers at the time. They stopped adding quantum dots, to my understanding, as far as what people have been saying lately. I can't rip the TV apart and verify that, and neither can they, so I don't know how they got that information. But, sponsorships, partners, they're in on it together, that kind of thing. Maybe that's how they got the information. But I will say this, if that's the case, I can kind of see why now people are, pulling away from Sony. Because if you remember that Triluminos was quantum dot, you remember that it's a big deal. And they came out with their Sony OLEDs, and what did they say? We have a Triluminos OLED. And that means quantum dots from the way they introduced it to us. And so, of course, with them coming out with a QD OLED, technically, if they stuck to what Triluminos actually meant, it would be the real Triluminos and not this whatever this is. They still don't have a real definition. If you go on their website right now, I guarantee you they'll say something to the effect of wider color than conventional TVs or 1 billion shades of color. They're just describing 10-bit color palettes. They're just describing 10-bit, color spaces. They're not describing what Triluminos actually really was. And I think that's the biggest injustice for us lifelong Sony users that understand what it was. So, in hindsight, this whole video is designed for the person who feels as though quantum TV should be a little nicer to Sony. Not only am I nice, this video is being shot on a Sony camera and on a Sony lens. And also, it's important to understand that anytime Sony does something, good or bad, we're going to report on it like everybody else. But we extended that olive branch today because why not? Kind of thinking maybe we should do features we like on other brands just to kind of be fair and level the playing field. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. And if you found this video informative or helpful, you know what to do.